transitioning to intelligent finance function with intelligent technology. And for this, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Ramamoorthy Rajagopal, who is Finance Director, Tesco Business Services at Tesco Bangalore. Giving a brief introduction, he is a seasoned professional with 21 years of extensive experience at Fortune 500 companies across multiple geographies. He has extensive leadership expertise across commercial business management, digital finance transformation, strategic cost management, investor relations, among others. He is an innovative problem solver who has formulated and driven change in complex and dynamic environment. With this, please welcome Mr. Ramamoorthy with a huge round of applause.
Thank you. We've heard a lot about, from my presenters early in the morning, we spoke a lot about where finance is headed. We talked a lot about Anna Plan. We heard a lot about what Ramya talked about, what Meenakshi talked about Lenovo. But many organizations are not in the same space. Many are much earlier in their journey. Some are a lot more evolved, and some are evolving. So the question is, how do you transform the finance function to one which is intelligent and leverages intelligent technologies? But let's get back to the basics. We all know the role of finance has changed. This is what we were doing in the past. If you don't do this today, no CEO is ever going to be appreciative of you. So, but the needs have evolved. Beyond this, we obviously are required to do business partnering. Everybody looks at finance for insights. Meenakshi came back and gave a beautiful question to say this. What is the gross margin on the second sale that we make on first customers? We all know we give the first sale always an incentive. What's the margin you really make? Businesses are now looking at finance to contribute towards strategy. What's the role you play? We all do 3-year roadmaps. It's no longer a perspective of we just consolidate plans. We contribute to strategy. We support decision making. How many decisions in any organization is taken without finance being involved? And they just want to come back and say, please sign off on the number? No, they want to hear your views and opinions. Everybody talks about digital driving automation. I'll briefly talk about it as well. And lastly, there is now a growing demand to come back and say, don't just tell me what's going to happen now. What's going to happen 6 months later, 9 months later? How accurate am I going to be? I think our previous guest on Anaplan talked about, I'm going to pay my bonuses. Imagine going and telling your CEO, sorry, I don't have cash. You look for it 8-9 months in advance. You come back and say your cash is based on multiple parameters. How do you do that? So that's the demand for the hour. But the businesses have always been existing. What changed? What has driven this huge demand on finance functions, on all of us? A single word for that is data. But if you deeply think about it, all this data always existed. Businesses have become a lot more complex. So what has fundamentally changed? What's fundamentally changed is the quantum of data that's now available. The cost of storage is exceedingly cheap. The accessibility of data is something which all our teams have got. And lastly, we have very good tools for it. So when you talk about transforming finance functions, it's not just having the right data, but it's a combination of all the 4 elements out there that what makes functions a lot more intelligent and digital. Let's say I've got all the data. Are we intelligent finance functions all of a sudden? What changes? From my experience, the transition from a traditional finance function to an intelligent one is a 4-step process. The first and the most fundamental element of it is having a very strong data foundation. It is a lot easier said than done. How many of you, just a quick show of hands, you believe you have the right data in your businesses to help the business take the right decision? Just a quick show of hands. Nobody? One. Okay, good. Thank you. At least one of the entire group. But the reality is it's easier said than done. We have a deluge of data. What we lack is information, and furthermore is intelligence. So what's the right data foundation you need? You have lots of data now, but you still have the same people. Meenakshi came back and said, if you're going to have 20 more people, your CEO will have a fit. So what do you do then? In order to churn all the data, you need to automate your existing activities, but you need to give them the time and bandwidth to absorb and consume all the data. So you need to drive automation. You have automated all the core processes. You still have tons of data, and you're now helping take a lot more decisions. Then the demand comes in. I need more insights. Give me actionable insights I can take. Like Meenakshi would come back and say, is your second sale gross margin is only 5%. They say, that's good. Now I can go and tell my sales guys, stop selling crap sales. You need insights. What do you do after you've got insights? You then come back and say, how do I come back and give you more predictive analytics to come back and say, this particular salesperson is doing this, X, Y, Z, etc., etc. Then you go into machine learning or AI models. The reason I kept that last is the word machine learning and AI is extremely abused. I think perhaps it's the second, third most abused word after analytics, but I think that's where the world is headed. So let's talk about how do we traverse this journey. I'm giving from my own experiences. I'm sure there will be diverse experiences from this august audience, but let me share what my perspectives are. Building the data foundation. This is often the most understated functions in any business. It is the toughest part for you to build a data foundation. If I were to come back and say, if you were to go back to your IT team and say, please build me data for finance. What data? What period? Let's say I give you all the information in the world today on your sales. The first question each and every one of us in finance will ask is, can you give me for last year? I'd like to compare. And then you'll say, oh no, last year was pandemic. Can you give me 2 years before? You can't. So sales guy says, what is the use of the data? How many of you have encountered a situation? There you go. A lot more people, so at least you have seen that. So how do you go back and do that? And this is my experience from that. Define your problem statement. Trying to get a data foundation is like trying to solve world hunger. You can never solve your data gaps. What part of your problem are you looking to solve? Define your problem statement. If your problem statement is, I need to get more information on sales, just focus on that. If your problem is to come back and say, I want productivity, just focus on that. If your problem is to come back and say, I want margin, revenue, purely focus on that. Don't let it stray, because you cannot solve world hunger. You can solve world hunger one piece at a time. And being from finance, start always with the periphery of finance. Start with conversations which you're having with your businesses, which you can leverage using data, right? If you're not even talking to your business teams on sales, don't go and talk about what's happening in sales in north part of India. It's a futile conversation. You should come back and say, what are you going to use the data for? Build around the periphery around it. I think like the previous speaker spoke on Anaplan, finance speaks to everybody. Pick up the function or area where you think you can have the maximum amount of impact, where you have a relationship. Establish a data collection process. You want your data to be consistent and accurate. You want your data to reflect realities. So the same rigor that you put in terms of financial controls, you need to apply on your data controls. If your data is rubbish, your outcomes are rubbish. So as you look to establish your core data foundation, focus on the problem, and the second element is data collection process. And as I said, build in gradual increments. Take one small step at a time. Nobody in the world started running on day one. You crawled, you walked, then only you ran. That exact same goes for data foundations. Until unless you're privileged in large organizations which have huge amount of data, even then most of us find a lot of data gaps. Start small. Be very clear what is the problem you're looking to solve. That's your first fundamental foundation of data foundation. On automation. My previous speaker spoke about the fact that most finance people are now beginning to learn Python. Quite a few of your teams would already know how to write codes in SQL. There are chartered accountants who have gone on the finance fields and vice versa. There are multiple technology options. You have no dearth of automation solutions out there. Absolutely no dearth. It's a question of how scalable you want your teams to be, and more critically, what are you comfortable with? But again, have a very clear objective of what you want to drive automation in. You cannot have an automation agenda. If you want to have a large automation agenda, then it becomes a part of finance transformation. You come back and do your massive ERP changes, etc. But most automation changes are small, niche, specific. You might have a situations where I have lots of approvals coming in. Automate that. You might have tons of business cases coming in. Automate that. You have situations where you want to do post-investment review. Automate that. But they're specific. Have a very clear objective of what you want to do. Before you automate, take a relook at, do you need to rechange your entire approach? what approach we have constructed or created may not be the right one. This is the classic advice you would hear when you go back for an ERP implementation. Don't rework your ERP for your processes, do the other way around. The same principle applies. Look at what you're doing and why. See if there is an opportunity. Many a times we have built up approaches and structures which were for a different generation. Rethink it. And when you're talking about automation, always think about the culture of automation you're creating in an organization. It is a journey. Your automation journey never ends. It's like trying to come back and say this is the last software update you're ever going to get on Android or Apple. It's never going to happen. It's going to continuously evolve. So its journey is very critical because new solutions, capabilities will continue to come. How do you leverage and adapt that? That's what makes a key differentiations. It's a journey. And lastly, test and learn. My bugbear with most finance colleagues, and I can speak safely in this room, is we tend to be too harsh on ourselves. We come back and create business cases for everything in planet Earth and say it has to give me 30% return. But when it comes to our own cases, we say, return kahan hai yaar? ROI kahan hai? How many times do we experiment? I think Ramya beautifully came back and said that we should spend a certain amount of money on innovation. How many times do we innovate? How many times we as a finance fraternity experiment? How many times do we accept failure? But if you have to evolve, you have to test and learn. Now, leveraging analytics. I know analytics is a buzzword, but trust me, if you use it correctly, it is very relevant. And I'll give you a classic example. When you're reading through the notes on analytics, think about it. You're the mayor of Bangalore and you're trying to solve the traffic problem, genuinely looking to solve it. What kind of analytics would you ask for? Define your problem. Can you solve the problem of Bangalore traffic overnight? Is that your goal? Anybody agrees with me? You can solve Bangalore traffic with analytics. Right? Exactly. Nobody can solve it. So what do you come back and say is, I want to solve the problem because I stay in Whitefield, let me be selfish. You can solve the traffic problem in Whitefield, which itself is huge. So you have to be very, very specific of what is the problem you're looking to solve. Don't try to solve world hunger. You'll hear me say this often, because whenever I talk about intelligent finance functions, I see scopes being defined to literally not only solve this world's, 3 worlds solve world hunger problems. And then we come back and say this is going to cost too much time delay, etc. Be very precise of what problem you want to solve. Are you looking to solve the traffic problem of Bangalore city, or being selfish, Whitefield? What will you do thereafter? What will you change with the analytics that you're going to get? Are you going to come back and put 50 more cops on the road? Are you going to put a lot more traffic lights? What are you going to do? Because every analytics problem must have a simplistic solution. So focus on day-to-day problems. You can't come back and create new roads. You can't come back and have auto drivers going straight. They will go zigzag. How do you use that to solve the problem? Make it actionable. If you come back and say, I can make you come from all the way from Whitefield to here, rather than 90 minutes and 30 minutes, it's not actionable. Our children might be able to come in 30 minutes. We can't come. So make it actionable. What are the 3 things you can do? Gradual increments. It should augment real world decisions. Analytics is not a means to an end. It is an enabler to an end. So if you're going to take a decision based on your gut, you can have analytics help you refine on that solution. If you're going to come back and say, this sales customer, I don't believe it is right, use analytics to come back and say how many times you have been successful at it. Use it to augment real world decisions. The last one is, don't underestimate the fact that analytics helps a human being to take a decision. If you were to open Google Maps, and Google Maps says it's going to take you 2 hours to go from here to the airport, how many of us immediately scroll down and see where is the red line? All of us do. Imagine there is no map. It just says, Google Maps says it's going to take you 2 hours. Will we believe it? You won't. Because as a human being, you like corroborative evidence. The machine is saying it takes 2 hours, but you scroll down the map and say, this part of the road. It's in Marathalli. Oh, I know very well. It's 2 hours, I understand. But you need that corroborating evidence. Analytics is not an answer for black box. So when you define an analytics problem, create a mechanism where you can out-explain the problem to someone who can take a decision. Because a rational mind will still try to understand why is that answer and test your case. Just because you have spent millions of dollars on analytics doesn't mean it's always right. No analytical model in this universe could have told you what would happen in COVID. No analytics model in this universe could have ever told you after COVID what will happen. Though many of us would have had a good guess, but no analytics model in the world can. So test your case and then expand. Lastly, machine learning and AI. I have heard tons of IT teams come back through most of my career saying is, you can solve this, I'll solve fantastic problems. Machine learning models can give you perfect forecasts. For businesses as complex as ours, I would love for them to do that. But the first question I would ask is, assess your need. Is machine learning and AI really the answer to the problem? Is it really the answer? Are there easier answers available? We have been running businesses for hundreds of years. See, our sales forecasts are there or thereabouts. If you're going from 2% to a 0.5% accuracy, is it 1.5% really worth it? How is it going to help you decide and run your businesses? So define what you want your AI ML solutions to do, and is there really a need for it? Focus on big problems with big impacts. Think about, does it really make sense for me to get the last 10 crore accuracy? Because you will spend disproportionate amount of time trying to do that. Leverage off-the-shelf solutions. Don't try to build your AI and ML models. They will be extremely expensive. They will suck up a lot of your and your leadership's time, and your outcomes will get delayed. Simply because someone has to understand what your business needs are. And do not underestimate, when you're trying to create anything on AI and ML model, you need to dedicate your team's time. The engineers behind it don't understand the business like you do. You cannot do saying 2 hours a time, I'll give my time, banda kar lega. Nahi hoga. It will not happen. You need to dedicate your time, your team's time. You need to help them understand the business rationales. I have been a part of many AI and ML solutions where we try to create something extremely complicated, and when you go down the logic, you made a lot of assumptions which the engineers behind just didn't know. You rework everything all over again. So let me give you quick examples of what we have done in Tesco. We have been fortunate. We've had tons and tons of assets. Frankly, I think we have far too many assets which don't talk to each other, but fine, we have got really, really good assets. So what did we try and do in Tesco Business Services in the last couple of years? We have built 75 bots that are running using RPA tools. Very clearly, we came back and said we want to automate and digitize some of our processes. We want some of our processes to be completely run by bots. RPAs are widely prevalent. We've done that. So we have 75 bots running at this point in time. We used PowerPoint, SharePoint automations to approve our workflows. You can have tons of other solutions, but the intent was, why does my finance team need to spend even a minute of time after emails? Why do I need to approve everything? Why does my team need to approve everything? We talked about delegation of authority. Automate it, let it run through. Business teams are mature. You want to spare ease. You want to save your scarce time. So we leverage that. Procurement analytics is something I'm personally passionate about. We talked about doing a lot of elements to it. But how many times do you really take a look at a supplier and says, the bottom 20% of your supplier we have never negotiated? Across my entire estate, across the whole of Tesco Group, we identified there were about 500 odd suppliers who were never negotiated in the last 20 years. Why? Because they were in the last 30%. The top 10 get milked day in and day out. Where is your value? Going after the same thing you've gone again and again? Or you want to go to new elements to it? In large organizations, you have tons of data. How do you know delegation of authority is working? How do you find out where is the next opportunity? How do you again allocate that scarce time of your procurement managers to go back and say, take a look at this? So we deployed that. Debt collection is something which all of us have involved with. but there is a person behind the supplier who's paying you. A person has a behavior has a pattern. How many times do we spend taking a look at that? How many times can you come back and say, if it is X supplier, if you collect collections guys, they will always be late, we know that. How do you institutionalize it? How do you come back and differentiate between somebody who's always a good paying customer versus somebody else? I used to work in telco. I used to take a look at my postpaid customer base. At that point in time, we just couldn't. But now we have means. Why do you want to blast a mail to everybody of your customers? Why not target only those who you know are going to be late? And the last element is, we have deployed a chatbot. You may come back and say, why would someone deploy a chatbot for finance? Think of the most common conversations your finance teams have with their business parts. Do I have budget? Can you send me my last report? I want to spend this, how can you help me with it? We have eliminated all of those conversations using a chatbot. None of my business teams come back and ask my finance partners to come back and say, can you tell me what my budget is? Can I spend this money or not? Don't ask my team, don't waste our time. Go talk to the chatbot, all the information is there. You want to report, ask the bot, it will send it to you. Don't ask us. Because the time that my team saves is to go back and have commercial conversations. I want to do this, is this the right thing to do? I would like to do this, how can we do it? Those are conversations finance adds value in. And that helps you go on your analytics, your ML conversations, etc. And lastly, we have developed this new solution which I call continuous cash monitoring engine. And if you take a look at it, all of us know our P&L like the back of our hands. And I'm in a retail business. My margins are wafer thin. So one of the things we take a look at it is we take a look at our entire portfolio of my suppliers, 20,000 customers on a real near-time basis. This is still an evolution, but the intent is to come back and create something what I call the cash knock, where I can see every single penny of my money, where is it stuck, how is it stuck. We have gone way beyond trying to find out if you're paying suppliers on time. My question is, am I paying anybody ahead of time? Because that's lost cash. That's an analytical solution that we've created. So if you think about it, in the last 2 years, it's not been a silver bullet, but then lots of small things to do. That just leaves me with one last message I'd like to leave you with. The most critical ingredient, if you want to transform your functions into an intelligent one, is be patient and have lots of perseverance. You will inevitably fail. Projects will get delayed. But if you have these two elements, you have the right combination to be successful. And the one thing that's only changing behind us is our need to transform is just accelerating. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.